In this video, we're going to go through a quick and simple routine that you can do each day to loosen up those stiff hips, which is actually really important for improving foot function, balance, and overall movement health. Now, we do have a full video that goes through the importance of spending time resting and moving on the ground, which is actually a major key for dealing with the root cause of these stiff hips. So highly recommend going and checking that out. But the reality is that most people have some amount of unavoidable chair sitting time. And so this routine is just an accessible way to help offset some of that time spent sitting in a chair. So let's get stuck in. Okay, first up we have seated hip rotations. So sitting on the ground, supporting with your hands behind you and leaning back. And then you're just taking each knee towards the ground as far as you can. Now, if that is just, halfway or 3/4, doesn't really matter, but ideally you're building towards getting both knees to the ground, which is expressing internal rotation on one hip and external rotation on the other. So this rotation movement is something that pretty much everyone misses in their daily life because they're not down here sitting on the ground regularly. So this seated hip rotation that's supported is a great way to add some of that back in, and over time you could also press up further. So rather than leaning back, you could be sitting up taller and eventually do the same thing without your hands. Whatever level that you're doing that at, go for 1 minute before moving on. Okay, next up we've got kneeling sit backs. So you're in this half kneeling position. You're sitting back with this hip onto your heel, towards your heel. You can have toes up or down on the back leg. And then you're trying to straighten this front leg as much as you can as you sit back. As you come back up, you're trying to push this hip forward and you'll feel a little bit of a stretch on the front. So we're hitting two parts or two key movements here, hip flexion, and you'll get a hamstring stretch obviously at that bottom position, and then hip extension up the top. And you're just going through this nice and slowly. You might find that a cushion underneath or a couple of cushions underneath your knee is helpful at first because that can be a lot of pressure on the knee. And you also might find that you don't go all the way back. You might only be coming sort of halfway, and then you might not be pulling all the way forward like that. Just explore your range of motion as much as you can. Going for 1 minute on one side and then swapping sides and going through that again. So for reference here on the range of motion, you could just be doing as far as that and up. There's really no right or wrong, it's just where you're at currently. And over time you'll find that you're able to go further and further. You can lift this toe up as you come down. Remember to breathe while you go through this movement. You could find a cadence of breathing in on the way down, out on the way up, or vice versa. Doesn't really matter, but it's a good way to keep your breathing going if you find a rhythm like that. Gradually try and increase the range of motion a little bit, either within your session or over time, over a period of weeks or months, as you do this routine more and more. Once you've done 1 minute on each side for this routine, then you can move on to the next exercise. Okay, next up we're working on hip circles. So we want a nice wide stance for this. We're trying to keep our knees straight, and then you can go hands on hips to help facilitate this. And what you'll do is shift to the side, to one side, and then you're actually moving your hips in a big circle or as big as you can all the way around while keeping your knees straight. So good to keep this nice and slow at first. Can feel a little bit weird to coordinate, but as you can see, I'm going forward, pushing over to one side, pushing backwards, and then pushing over to the other side. So just try to keep these knees straight rather than sort of trying to do this with the knees. When we keep our knees straight, it isolates more of the movement to the hip. You can go 30 seconds in one direction, and then you can reverse the direction as well. And again, as always, with all of this, you're just exploring your own range of motion, where that's currently at, and then ideally building over time. So that might mean that you have a narrower stance, and it might mean you're just doing really little circles like this. But over time, try and push the stance a little bit wider and push your circles a bit wider as well. So total of 1 minute for this one before moving on. Okay, last up, we're doing a high knee march, and this is a great way to strengthen and mobilize into hip flexion and hip extension. So one leg is lifting up like that as high as you can while keeping this knee straight, and then you're swapping. Like so. This could be a dowel, a broomstick, or a wall, just for balance, because we're not really focusing on the balance aspect of this. We're just focusing on strengthening through our available range of motion. As you can see, while this hip goes up, as long as this stance leg stays straight or not bending forward like that, then this hip will be going into extension. And you'll also feel the glutes on the stance leg fire up as you try and keep it straight and as you drive that knee up. Now, of course, range of motion, it's all up to wherever you're at the moment. Could just be parallel or even below parallel, but over time, you're trying to build that up. And try not to speed through the reps too much. Get up to your highest and then try and push it a bit more, and then lower down. 1 minute total of this, and that wraps up your routine. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying these videos and getting value out of them, please do like and subscribe. That helps support our channel, and you'll get notifications for when we put out videos each week, all about foot health, foot function, balance, mobility, movement health in general. And if you're looking for more structured programs and guidance and community engagement, then we do have our Explorer membership, which you can find out all the details about in the description below.